In a powerful show of support for nature, nearly every government in the world united behind the CBD's sweeping biodiversity plan for life on Earth. They committed to halting the extinction of threatened animal, plant, and fungi species. And in an historic first, they also committed to helping those species recover, so that the life we share our planet with can not only survive, but thrive. Making these goals a reality will take all of us working together. Reverse the Red is supporting governments, conservation experts, and communities around the world as they join forces to activate tried and tested tools and tie global efforts to local expertise. All in a coordinated effort to assess, plan, and act for wildlife. Together, we can save species from extinction. Together, we can secure our planet's future. Together, we can reverse the red.
All right, welcome to our third and final fungi webinar on the global strategy for fungal conservation. It's hosted by Reverse the Red. My name is Caitlin Brandt, and I'm the Species Impact Coordinator here at Reverse the Red. So I wanted to welcome you all this morning, this afternoon, this evening, depending on where you are in the world. This is going to be an open forum, so more of an open discussion today. And if you have a question or a comment, you can put it in the chat. You can raise your hand as well, and we'll go around and everyone can speak. This meeting is recorded. Just so you know, we can turn off the recording for the last 5-10 minutes if you'd rather speak not on this, and the recording will be shared with everyone who registered. Just wanted to say this is made possible by all of our sponsors. And I will let our lovely hosts today introduce themselves. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Greg to get started.
Hello. Good day, everybody. I'm Greg Mueller. I'm Chief Scientist Emeritus at Chicago Botanic Garden, and I co-chair the IUCN SSC Fungal Conservation Committee. And I'm joined today with my two wonderful colleagues, Katia Cantiero, who's a consultant that focuses on fungal conservation issues and plants as well. And then Rachel Hoffman, who leads the global program at Plant Life International, the global voice for plants and fungi. And as Caitlin said, today is the third of our three webinars where we're really focusing and trying to introduce and help people engage with the global strategy for fungal conservation. And so this is the next, yeah. So the first two webinars, we did most of the talking. So I led the discussion on the first one where we kind of said why, laid out the problem and what we were trying to address. The second one, Katya and Rachel really went more in depth about what the strategy is. And this one we want to hear from you. So it's really going to be important that you engage with us, and you'll see us there in a couple minutes. We'll have a couple of Mentimeter questions and some other opportunities for you to help us understand where we are with this strategy. And so before I do that, no, that's great, Katya. Thought we'd just take a couple minutes and, we, for those of you that haven't been part of the conversation so far, go through really quickly what we're talking about. So what we're trying to do is address this problem that although fungi are in the spotlight a lot now, We're reading about them more and more and more. They're in many conversations. They're not in national, regional, and international conservation policy and action. And as an example, this was the logo for the 2010 to 2020 United Nations Decade of Biodiversity. And you can see the fish and the birds and the plants and all the good stuff. Um, but no fungi because we're not part of that conversation and we need to address that. Next slide. And so what we did was at uh, the International Mycological Congress in Maastricht in the Netherlands 2 years ago, we had a open workshop where we discussed, well, how do we address that problem? How could we move fungi, get them into the conservation conversation so that there is action, there's policy and funding to ensure that fungi are conserved and that they're used sustainably and equitably for the benefit of people. And so after that, we put together an advisory committee that was made up of 21 members from 13 countries. And here's a list of those folks. And then we developed the Global Network for Fungal Conservation, which we'll be talking about in a little bit, who helped compile the data that goes into the strategy. Next slide. And the decision was that we would align it with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. So the Global Biodiversity Framework is the framework is the structure that countries that signed on to the CBD to the Convention for Biological Diversity um, uh, does their biodiversity work, their conservation work. And so the Global Biodiversity Framework, the current one, has a vision for 2050, which talks about a world living in harmony with nature, um, where nature biodiversity is valued, conserved, and restored, used wisely, and delivers benefits essential for all people. And the framework has four major goals. It has goal about protecting and restoring biodiversity. It's talking about using biodiversity, so prospering with nature. So then we have to share those benefits equitably and need to develop how we're going to invest and collaborate to achieve the first three goals. Next slide. And so there's also 23 targets that the that are set up to achieve those four goals. Um, and we looked at all those 23 targets and we said fungi are probably important for all of them, but there were 12 of them that we believe that cannot be met unless fungi are included. And so that was all 8 targets that are associated with reducing the threats to biodiversity. So that's everything from spatial planning to species conservation to ensuring sustainable harvest, using biodiversity to reduce alien species and reducing the risks of pollution and climate change to biodiversity. And then a suite of targets for meeting people's need. So some of these look similar to the other ones, but instead of saying that how we're going to keep climate change from reducing biodiversity, these targets are talking about how we're going to use biodiversity to mitigate the impact of climate change. And then the last set are about how we're going to implement that, how we're going to find tools and solutions for implementation. So that's kind of the targets that we chose to. Um, Overall, for the success of this across all the targets, including the 12 that we're highlighting, are there some keys to success? So we really need to be thinking about how we integrate indigenous people knowledge and local communities and promoting gender equality across the board. Um, in virtually every one of the targets, there is a need for building capacity and training. To be successful, we have to have interdisciplinary and interregional collaboration. We need to mainstream fungi into existing frameworks. And importantly, we need to invest and sustainably fund programmed to address the data gaps. So the global strategy has a couple of components to it. When you read through that, you'll see there is an introduction that talks about why fungi matter and the scale of the problem. Then we go through and talk about the purpose, you know, what the strategy is trying to achieve and who it's for, how it fits within the existing global frameworks, particularly the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And then we go into the details of the actions, how to use them. These actions are voluntary and complementary. Important to note that this strategy is built to work with countries, NGOs, sub-regional areas to enable them to meet their conservation goals. These are not new efforts. These are aligned with efforts that we hope are already ongoing. And then we provide some guidance and prioritization and phased implementation for different national contexts. Next slide. And so here's what the strategy looks like. This is for target one. What we start out with is the actual text from the Global Biodiversity Framework. So the entire text there, and then a little bit rationale to include fungi. Why is fungi essential to be able to meet that target? And then we have a series of actions, and these are, in this case, what we need to do to help meet this target. And then to be able to do that, we've identified some research and infrastructure priorities that are going to be important to be able to meet the targets. And these aren't done siloed. They're not, we do one and then the other. They can be done and they should be done integratedly to move this forward. I should also say, even though we identify a number of research and infrastructure priorities, we can't wait. We don't need to wait until all of those priorities are done. We have enough data to start moving forward. We, of course, need more information. We need to refine the information we have, but we have enough data to move forward. Next slide. And then for each of these, we have a series of case studies um, and tools and resources where parties can look at this and say, oh, yeah, here's what's being done. This is a good idea. I can work off of that and move forward. Next slide. And then we have a series of recommendations or guidelines for how to implement this. And, the idea is that you need to prioritize. You need to look at the national context or your institutional context on how we move forward. We view that these actions can be prioritized to fit if you're any country besides the US, developing NBSAPs. We can help you. The strategy is aligned with those. And then, make use of regional coordinating bodies, whether it's the International Mycological Association, the African Mycological Network, European Mycological Association, etc. So there are tools out there are people out there to help get this started and to implement. So that's kind of our quick introduction on what we are doing. Um, the strategy is now out for consultation. We're hoping to get most of the comments back by next Monday, by the 22nd. So we're towards the end of the consultation program, but there's still plenty of time for you to make your comments. And here, these QR codes will get you to the strategy and to the feedback form, and also to join the network. Um, what have I missed, Katya or Rachel? Something else, or do we start with the conversation? Okay. So from there, as I said, that's really the art presentation, how we talk. We want to open it up to you now. So I'm going to turn it over to Katya to kind of run this part of the program with some of the questions that we're hoping you'll help us with. And these are going to be open-ended, right? So we have a couple of suggested questions that we want answers to, but then we can open up to other comments, questions, or whatever from the audience. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, so I'm gonna share, sorry. My Mentimeter, I stopped sharing so we could see everyone. I don't know if anyone has any question in the meantime, or if we just start the discussion with the Mentimeter and then see how it goes. Sorry, I'm just presenting, so let me share my screen again. So yeah, if you scan the QR code and there's the code to go to the Mentimeter or go to menti.com. I'm gonna put the link in the chat as well. Okay. And so we're just starting with the easy question, kind of just wondering how many of you have actually read the strategy or started reading and still going through, or and there's no right or wrong, by the way. We just want to have an idea as we go through these questions, if you read or not. And we're not capturing your name, so don't worry. We just want to have an idea of overall from the group. Um,
And you will not
so
get into trouble if you say no.
no.
Just to emphasize that fact. Be honest.
Katya,
No.
the Menti, it says it's not open to voting, so we might just have to change the setting
Oh,
to get it started.
really? Oh no, I'm so sorry. I knew something would go wrong. Okay, how do I start? No, this isn't what I want. So sorry about that. How do I? I thought I would start the presentation and it would go for voting. No. So sorry, everyone. Um, mm,
Kathy, it says there might be a button at the bottom of the screen when you start the presentation that says start voting.
okay. Gonna start the presentation again.
In the meantime, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat so we can see where you're from, where you're joining us from.
I do not see that option. Uh, okay, I used to do a lot of Mentimeters and we just start sharing and people could start voting, so I'm not sure. Hmm. Okay, I think I got it. Can you try now? I'm gonna share my screen again. Yes, okay, I can see people are voting. So sorry about that. There's always something, isn't it? Okay, and I see we have 23 people, so I'm just gonna give like a few more seconds and then we'll just go through to the next question. And hopefully, if I did the settings right, which now I'm not so confident, you'll be able to continue voting as I go to the next question. But let's see if I don't cut you off. Okay.
What's interesting about those results is it looks like it's so stimulating of a document that if you start it, you finish it, right? There's very few partials, right? So well, it must just be a, a page turner. That's great.
Okay, let me know. I move to the next question. Let me know if I cut people off or yeah, if you're still voting on the next one. Um, yeah, and I'm not checking the comments, by the way, so please someone monitor the chat as we go. Um, okay, so now with this question, we were wondering what format you think the strategy should be to make it most accessible to different audiences. So in the other webinars we mentioned, we understand this is quite tricky because we're trying to target different audiences with this strategy, not only policymakers, but especially practitioners, researchers, kind of a whole of society approach. And we are aware that we're going to have different formats for the different audiences. So we were just wondering if you read the strategy or if you didn't read the strategy, but you're aware of other strategies, if you have any ideas of how, yeah, we can format it. Okay, and I can see an executive summary will be good. Yeah, definitely. Okay, a PDF, yeah. Online document, small booklet, maybe a short explanation. Oh, I like the video. Yeah, a short explaining video, um, kind of going through the different targets and actions. Oh, a kid's book. That's an interesting one. Um, I wonder if someone, maybe the person who commented on that or someone else would like to expand on that. Kind of, are you thinking that this will be helpful to get more like an educational piece to get kids interested on fungi, or are you thinking reaching out to the parents through the kids? Yeah, I wonder if someone would be open to give us a bit more insight on that.
That was me. Oh, sorry. Who put that in? I just thought our fungi are so beautiful. It should be easy to make an accessible book about it. And often kids' books are also read by adults and provide a way into fungi and why they're important and how they can be protected. So not a lot background otherwise, just thinking it would be a way to approach people who have no relationship with science.
Yeah, no, but yeah, more like an educational piece about the importance of fungi, right? Yeah, I see that. Oh, someone suggested a podcast. Yeah, that's a good idea, actually.
That's a
Of
great
course, we'll,
idea. That's a great
yeah,
idea.
yeah. Um,
I also like the one which talks about understanding the relationship of them to the larger picture. Absolutely. It's not just about the global biodiversity framework and the sustainable development goals. They're very important, but there are other frameworks out there as well that alignment is really important for.
yeah, and we try to outline a little bit of that uh, in the introductory text where we mentioned, this is not just related to the CBD, but to other frameworks as well. But yeah, it could go beyond that, of course. And the idea is that then the strategy will support not only IUCN strategies, but each NGO strategy and national biodiversity plans and strategies on kind of how to incorporate fungi.
Sorry, Katia, the suggestion there about more images would be nice. If any of you out there have got any nice images to share with us, we would be incredibly grateful. We're always trying to get images and ones we can use without copyright. So please contact us if you're willing to share any that you've got. We have a very small library at the moment from a very generous person, so it would be great to get some more in.
Yeah, and the current document doesn't have images because it's just the text. So we're going through public consultation still. This is not the final version, it's just the draft. And that's why we didn't include any visuals or anything like that. It's just the text. So once we go through the comments from the public consultation and have a final text, then we'll go through the design stage and get a nice visual document that will be the final version, at least for now. Okay, I like the infographic as well. I think that's a great idea, kind of yeah, connecting the different targets with the different frameworks and connecting the actions. I think an infographic is great. Okay, I think I'm gonna pass to the next question. If you're still putting suggestions, please continue. And yeah, even after, if you think about something after the webinar, feel free to reach out to us. Okay, so in this question, we were wondering, beyond formatting, how do we reach out to the various audiences? And some of the previous answers kind of already included that through the podcast. And things like that. Anyone has any other suggestions, not about the format of the document, but how do we reach out to the different audiences? So we're planning to launch it at COP17 in Armenia in October. So that is going to be an easy one to connect with policymakers and governments. But not everyone will be there, right? And we have other audiences that we want to make sure are aware of the strategy as well. I like to force government officials to hear it. I'm wondering if anyone has a suggestion. How can we force them?
I think Katia means encourage there, just in case anyone was wondering about her techniques with forcing people. Encourage and influence, I think, Katia, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, someone wrote force government officials to hear it. So, yeah, how can we? I know people don't mean forcing it, but how can we
influence and encourage
purposely, without being too aggressive, make sure we put this in front of government officials beyond launching it and promoting it at COP? So I don't know if anyone has any ideas.
Oh, that's a good suggestion regarding statutory nature bodies. Very good suggestion.
Yeah. And the translation, we are planning to translate at least a summary across multiple languages. So we are planning for the translation.
Yeah.
This last one that just came up, that was something I was going to say to add to this conversation. So some of you may know that the plant community, the botanical community, has the global strategy for plant conservation. And that has been kind of coordinated through the large botanic gardens and things like that. We don't have a infrastructure similar to that as the plant. We don't have a series of fungal gardens across the globe. So one of the things that, if you have ideas of how we're going to reach out, how we're going to get the word out, it fits within here, within the infrastructure that we have within the mycological community and broader conservation community.
And we are in contact with many mycological societies. Of course, that it's hard to be in contact with everyone at the national level, but our hope is through the Global Fungal Conservation Network as well, we can make those connections. And we're relying a lot on word of mouth and people sharing and promoting. And again, reach out because we can't, a handful of individuals can't do everything. So the idea is that the network will come together and reach out to their national agencies and governments.
And that brings up, what kind of alluded to it but did not talk about it directly. We There is the global network for fungal conservation that is being compiled. I don't know what the current number is, but it's a growing network. And any of you that are interested, we put the QR code there someplace. We'll put it on again at the end. So please join. And one of the roles that one can do as part of the network is help spread the word.
Yeah.
The suggestion about connecting with existing science policy groups. If anybody could suggest what they might be more specifically, you don't have to do it on the Menti, but if you want to get in touch with us about that, that would also be very helpful. It's quite difficult when you're dealing across a global landscape to pinpoint where they exactly are. So if you know of any, please do let us know.
Okay, I think I'm gonna move to the next question, if that's okay with everyone. And I think it's the last question, by the way. Yeah. So kind of now focusing on the Global Fungal Conservation Network, as Greg mentioned, we don't have Botanic Gardens Conservation International that brings a large number of organizations and experts together. So we're trying to kind of fill that gap by creating the Global Fungal Conservation Network, where it's a voluntary membership, and we welcome individuals, so you don't have to be affiliated to a specific organization to join, or you can join as a representative of your organization, and we can have more than one member of the same organization. So if you're not part, join. We put the link in the chat if you're interested. When you go to the form to join the network, you'll have a link where you can see the terms of reference, so you can see exactly what we're asking for people when you join the network, because we don't want to just have a list of members. We want to have an engaged group that will support us at this stage with the development of the strategy, but then later on how we're going to implement the strategy, how we're going to communicate about it, and things like that. So we were wondering if anyone has an idea of how can we best engage and mobilize this network, and then of course connecting with other existing networks as well, thinking about the implementation of the strategy. And I can see comments. Okay, I'm going to open while we wait for the comments in the Mentimeter, I'm going to see if anyone has any comments in the chat that
I'm responding to those, Katia. So.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Rachel. And feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hands. We're a small group, so yeah, please don't feel like you can't talk if you have anything to add. And this is the last question as well, so I'm gonna stop sharing and we can see each other and have more of a conversation than yeah.
Okay, can I
typing
add something?
Yes.
Okay, I just hello, my name is Alena Biketova. Probably some people already know me. Yes, I'm a mycologist with 20 years experience, and mainly, of course, like I work with taxonomy of bolids, but with medicinal macrofungi too. And of course, I had experience in species conservation. And I would like to highlight that the main problem for fungal conservation is that we still have very small knowledge about real biodiversity of fungi, comparing to plants and animals. That's why it's sometimes very difficult actually to um, kind of implement the same strategies that we have already developed for plants and animals. And I think that very deep collaboration between taxonomists, also people who work with fungal biodiversity, ecology, with meta-barcoding, and conservationists, it need to be in synergism. So, for example, if we taxonomists, we study deeply some group of fungi with, like very good type study, then after that, for example, other groups of people who also work with fungal conservation, they need to kind of do analysis already on the lower levels. For example, if there are some species, like also like bolids, for example, many species of bolids are quite rare. So then they need to go to their like local herbaria and also analyze what is actually in their country and what is included in their red lists in red data books. As also one of good examples, we recently published paper on the genus Cyanoboletus in the Mediterranean area. And long time ago, it was assumed that Cyanoboletus plurivalentus is like cosmopolitan species. It grows everywhere. And this species is included in red data books, for example, regional red data books in Russian forest in Primorsky Krai. But of course, like after this study, we showed that this species is clearly European. And just a small secret, like with my Russian colleagues, of course, like we found out that that species that grows in forest of Russia, it's a new species to science, which is even more rare than Cyanoboletus pulverlentus. Then now, like we are working on the description of the species. And in this case, like, of course, like we will include that species in assessment in the international red data list. So that's kind of good examples that sometimes like we protect fungal species, but we don't actually know if this species actually grow in this area, if we didn't do proper genetical analysis, And another cases is, for example, we found like some rare species long time ago in that area, but some biome was destroyed, and we are not finding many fruit bodies of this fungi. So what can actually help us? Proper metagenomics. I mean, studies of environmental samples, and I think that also collaboration with such research group like also SPAN. I know that they do this. It would really help for fungal conservation.
Yeah. So that's exactly what we tried, hopefully, to capture with the strategy. But if you see that we're not capturing things properly, then do please give us our feedback. But it's exactly what you're saying, Alona. We need and we hope that the network will support that collaboration. We can't expect one person to do everything and know everything and have all the skills. So I think the key is really to come together, work together, and do something. And I think the problem is that we can't wait until we know everything, because when we get there, we have lost more than half of it. We have to do something now with the information we have, and at the same time keep exploring and keep updating. So we have an assessment that was done in a species that we thought was widely distributed. Now we have more information. So the red list allows you to update that assessment, and you say that the category changed due to new knowledge or change in taxonomy or something like that. So the methodology is ready to incorporate those changes and take into account the uncertainty that we have, and that's all documented when you do a red list assessment. So it's very important, and as Greg said, we can't wait to have the list of research and infrastructure priorities done to start acting. Where I use a metaphor that I heard someone saying, I just stole from someone else. They say if we're going to wait to act until we know everything, it's like you're trying to read all the books in a library while it's literally burning with you on it. And this is how we kind of are, unfortunately, in this moment. We're trying to describe species at the same time as we see them disappearing. So we have to do something to protect the ones we already know are threatened and need action, while then taxonomists like you and many others keep describing the species that we still don't know. So it's really about this collaboration and integration of efforts across different disciplines.
Yeah. In fact,
Sorry.
no, that's fine. In fact, that's the way we have it phrased. You know, if you saw the way we have it organized, we have the actions and the resource needs because we view that those have to be done together, right? So to really move forward on generating some of the data we need support from governments, from funding agencies, from others that want those data. So working together, the idea is to raise the awareness, the need to have these data, and then to the mycological community, the conservation community, the policy community work together to move that whole thing forward. And where we've been so far is the mycologists are out there trying to do their work kind of separately and not having the support and the recognition that it needs by the broader community. So that's kind of what the strategy is trying to accomplish. So yeah.
I stopped sharing. So because I saw people already commented and there were really good feedback, and I thought we could, yeah, have a broader discussion. Now, Cesar, you have your hand up if you want to jump in.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Cesar Marin from Chile. Um, a comment and a question. The comment is that I'm vice chair in the International Network on Soil Biodiversity in FAO, and also vice chair in the International Intergovernmental Technical Panel on Soils, also in FAO. This goes for 2 years one position and 3 years the other position until 2028, I think. So I made a comment in the formulary regarding approaching FAO and approaching this kind of soil science people. I think that one way to sort of force policymakers to hear us is through ecosystem services approach. And of course, we all know how important fungi are for many ecosystem services. You put a very nice list in the presentation. Um, so more than happy to make that connection directly with ITPS and with the Global Soil Partnership. And we are
Thank
also
you.
currently contributing to a CBD document, a white paper on, yeah, on soil biodiversity in general. So that will be very nice to do. And my question is related to, because in the list I saw tools like Index Fungarum, but also so more like classical morphological biodiversity tools. But then, of course, as previous person mentioned, there are also tools, metabarcoding tools. So I always have wondered how we make the dialogue between both. And myself, I'm a co-author in one of the Spawn papers from last year, and showing the the less than 10% of protected mycorrhizal hotspots. Um, but how do we get from that, which is obtained through metabarcoding data, to list species that need to be protected? That connection, I always wonder how is the plan to do that?
Yeah. Um, can I just jump in very quickly? So, and I think, yeah, I think we all agree. If you have those connections, please reach out to them and share this widely. We don't own the strategy. We just help to develop it, but the strategy is yours. It's not ready yet. Just be aware we're at the draft stage and we're asking for comments, and hopefully we'll improve the strategy based on everyone's comments. So if you want to share with them at this stage, so they can provide that some comments. That will be great, and let us know if they need a bit more time. That's absolutely fine as well to receive the comments a bit after, as long as it's not too late, because then we won't have time to get things ready for COP. Or if you want to wait until we have a final draft to share with them, that's absolutely, yeah, fine. But the idea is really that this is your strategy. This is a strategy for fungi. So own it, share it, implement it. And if there's any way that we can support you with more documents or more information, just reach out to us. And yeah, regarding connecting DNA and morphological data, that's exactly one of the gaps that the strategy identified. We know we can't do conservation without including DNA, but we don't have a standardized guideline that tell us how to do it. What we do know is that we need something urgently. So that was one of the key actions from the strategy, is really bringing the mycological community and beyond mycological community, because this is an issue in other groups as well. It's not just for fungi, it's also for other groups that are trying to incorporate molecular data into conservation. Let's come together and define with the tools we have and the methodologies we have at the moment what will be the best approach to make sure this data is used in a meaningful way for conservation, right? Yeah, so
Can
that will be
I
then the implementation stage.
I would just like to add though as well, going back to your previous point on the soil biodiversity papers and CBD approach on that, we have been looking at that and tracking that. And I think again, where we can find those entry points of referencing the strategy or bringing out some of the guidance or whatever that's relevant to that and embedding them in these processes. So if we can work with you on that, we have been looking at it, but having that connection through you would be really helpful. So it's not just about sharing that document. I think we need to work to integrate it where we can into these processes in the lead up to COP. And your facilitation around that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ceci, you bring up a good point. So we've been highlighting, this conversation, but if you in the document we talk about that, though we're aligned with the global biodiversity framework, we think that this has relevance to um, other policies. So including I'm forgetting the exact title, International Policy for Soil Biodiversity, things like that. So we did participate last year in the Substa conversation on soil biodiversity, and we were able to get some text in that document. So, but we need a lot more help. So all of you, anybody on this call that have inroads into any of these other fora, any of these other policy, please help us gain entry and inform us what is needed to do that. How do we successfully do that? What information will be necessary to incorporate fungi into these things? So the framework is one thing, but we're interested in across any policies that are relevant.
Anyone has any questions or comments, suggestions? Sorry, I'm not being able to catch up with the chat. But yeah.
So one of the questions comes in, I think, back to how we coordinate the network. Oh, I see Yuta has her hand up. Yuta, you're going to have something more brilliant to say than I was going to, so go ahead.
Don't think so. I was wondering, embarrassingly, I only now had to look through your strategy, and I'm coming from the data world, and I'm wondering why you don't have target 21 in your strategy, which is the one that encompasses GBIF and all the infrastructure people I work with, trying to organize the data in a way that we actually can do global monitoring. So is there any reason?
I think it was when we pulled together our network to do this, there was no expertise to deal with that in any meaningful way. Recognizing that that's super, super important. And so out of those last enabling set of targets, we just chose one of them because we thought it kind of was overarching. But you're right that target 21, many of the other targets are super important, and maybe we should think about um, looking into Target 21, if we want
Mm,
to think about that. But that's, yeah, good point,
mm.
Gita. Thank you.
Yeah, and we do recognize so there's lots of the other targets that are very important that we didn't include, right? As Greg mentioned in the introduction, we tried to focus the actions for the targets that will not be met by countries unless they include fungi. Of course, you can't say you're reducing or halting and reducing species extinction if you don't take into account the whole kingdom of life, right? So that was the thought behind the targets we chose, but we do recognize, and we mentioned something in the introductory text. We can't implement a lot of those actions without taking into account the implementation targets as well. So sharing the data, including indigenous people and local communities knowledge, and actively including them in the implementation of those actions, getting sustainable funding and all of that are key to make sure that we can implement the actions. But not including fungi doesn't mean necessarily the countries will not achieve their GBF targets. Um, so that was, yeah, the main thought behind it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just going, unless there's other people have some more important, not more important, but other comments they want to say. It's again this, we're developing this network, and we're really trying to think of how to communicate. And we had some, I must admit, the Mentimeter was going so fast, so maybe there was already great suggestions and everything's there already. But how do we organize? How do we, um, is there an idea that we need to meet, do we have a, um, yeah,
Yeah,
some
so the
electronic
Mentimeter,
way to keep communication going among members, I guess would be part of the question. And maybe it's already there. I saw
yeah,
that
some
we use
people
for
said,
every 6 week, 6 months or something. Yeah.
yeah, and someone mentioned here some kind of regular online
Okay.
meetings, reports, working groups for different targets, research
Oh,
priorities.
I like that.
Um, so we do have some suggestions, but if anyone has any other suggestion, um, yeah, of course, we have some thoughts that will depend on funding as well. So I'm guessing at the beginning the meetings will be more focused online, but maybe at some point we can organize in-person meetings, regional in-person meetings or something like that as well, if we manage to get the funding to organize those. Um, yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing again. Okay, I don't know, Caitlin, do you want to stop the recording and then see if anyone else has any more comments?
Yeah, for sure. I'll just pause it now.